Hi, everybody. On this episode of the EV Advisory Podcast, our host, JM Toriel, lead EV advisor at Plugin BC, will be chatting with Steve Bell-Irving, Senior Business Development Manager at SWTCH Energy, which is a company that provides end-to-end EV charging and energy management solutions for multi-unit and commercial properties. In this episode, Steve will be sharing how networked platform lets building add EV chargers without costly electrical upgrades and why intelligent load management will unlock more charging capacity with less infrastructure stress. They will also be talking about requirements for rebate programs available. So let's dive right in.
Welcome to the EV Advisory Podcast, where we provide authentic expert advice to residents and businesses across the beautiful province of British Columbia that want to install EV charging stations in their buildings. The EV Advisory is an official podcast of the EV Advisor program with myself as host, JM Toriel, at the Fraser Basin Council, whose location is at the Vancouver offices on the unceded territories of the Coast Salish peoples, also known as downtown Vancouver. The EV Advisor program is funded by the Ministry of Energy and Climate Solutions and the Government of British Columbia as part of the Clean BC Go Electric initiative. Our outreach mission through this podcast is to serve you, the listening public, with helpful advice through conversations with leading experts. I'll ask the first question I asked to all the guests here is, what got you into the world of, EV, the EV world?
Yeah, no, happy to be here. Thanks, JM. What got me into the world? I have two young kids, 4 and 6, and I believe in EVs, and I want them to drive EVs, so I want to build a framework around them. I came from the construction world for 5 years. I came from garbage and recycling for 5 years prior to that. And so having built systems, infrastructure, managed projects and so forth, I felt coming into an area of which I'm passionate about with EV and sustainability, building that for the future for my kids. So you put that together and now I can help multifamilies in their buildings put chargers in, but also look long term and see what this could look like in 10 or 15 years.
Awesome. Yeah, I have kids myself, and definitely they're front and center in a lot of the decisions I make moving forward, and certainly as an EV driver and in this world as well. The generational shift is definitely upon us now, and it's good to see and it's inspiring. So thanks for sharing that. So your company, SWTCH Energy, is quite established in the field of EV charging. I think started in Toronto, if I'm not mistaken.
Toronto, 2016.
2016, yeah. So the energy management system component has always been a really important element of, not just having chargers, but also incorporating the energy management system within the design of the network, and so not just about the hardware, but the software. How would you describe the factors that set SWTCH apart from the competition?
Yeah, in terms of SWTCH and the competition, look, it's a great marketplace to be in right now. There's a lot of people and businesses that do really good things. SWTCH, having been in the market for much longer than some of them, not all of them, but we have experience. We've got the questions that have been asked. We've had the problems that have happened. We've seen the ebbs and flows of funding models. We've seen applications go our way and not our way. So it's great perspective to bring into the client, to that conversation. So, really coming to the table with that experience of, hey, this is how charging works, this is how energy management works, but also this is how kind of start to finish people around you, not just SWTCH, but advisors and other groups that are participatory, they can help. So having that conversation and not just saying, hey, buy this from us, it's, okay, let's look at a bigger picture here. And I think that really separates us, having, as I have some of the gray hairs in the market with a bit more experience. We're excited to do that.
Excellent, thanks. So the rebate program that we deal with and that we're focused on here today, which is the EV charger program for MERS, but also for workplaces that you provide service for. is a kind of general term for the public as EV chargers. Technically that's incorrect, as you probably know. It's more EV supply equipment, so EVSE.
Yeah.
In the biz, I guess we term it that way. But the reason being that EV charging at level 2 or the equipment is considered the correct term as EVSE, and level 1 obviously is commonly referred to like a plug or an outlet that's just the 110.
Mm-hmm.
And many people, if they're kind of first coming into purchasing an EV or learning about EVs, they might think that that's sufficient, but obviously we know that and the program is devoted to specifically networked level 2 EVSE.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And in that sort of definition, it's based on AC, and I know that you also provide DCFC chargers as well. But for again, this program we're focused on the AC
Mm-hmm.
level 2 EVSE chargers, just to sort of bring people into the mix. How do you feel that this sort of general knowledge aspect among BC drivers has kind of improved over the time that you've been in this world? With EV topics, are you finding that there's a general better understanding of just the kind of terminologies and things like that? I'm sure you walk through this a lot with your customers, but do you find that there's an element of better understanding that's occurring, and is that shift something that's just transpired recently in your experience? What's your thoughts on that?
I think with conviction, I don't ever recall setting a quote and indicating this is an EVSE quote.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody wants a quote for chargers or charging station. It's just the common language that people are using in here, right? Give charger rebate programs. So it's in that wording that people become familiar with. So EVSE is the technical term, it's the formal term.
Yeah.
So we all understand that. But for the public in that setting, they want a charger to charge a vehicle, right? So it's this general box of this idea of, here's my charger, here's its function, and that's how I relate to it. And again, most of the programs, they use the word charger. I can't imagine too many people are reverting back to the EVSE side. And I don't see any conflict in that, right? It's familiar enough to people, and just the idea behind EV charging, right? The function of charging a vehicle comes from a charger.
Yeah.
So for the most part, people just get familiar with that term.
Yeah, agreed. Now, there's kind of network charging we talked about. Obviously, in the case of this program as well, the level 2 chargers must be networked.
Yeah.
And so that works in your favor because all your chargers are networked for these types of setups.
Mm-hmm.
And the other kind of like important element that might not be really well understood by the public at this point is the whole open charge point protocol, or OCPP.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to reiterate the importance of that, and if you could maybe describe it in your words as to what it is and why it's important, and how you basically describe that to your potential customers.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's about the functionality of being able to manage a charger. When you have no load management, no connectivity, no sight line into how that charger is functioning, other than maybe reading a manual meter, you don't have a lot to go on. Not only that, especially in the space that we play in, which is multifamily and commercial properties, the reporting period and reporting data is critical, right? For different price rebates, different options that they are signing on for, the carbon credits, and so they need that, right? When it comes to the OCPP component, the testing that goes into being functional on those chargers, you have to do that well in order for it to operate correctly. Different chargers operate in different ways. It's not a one-size-fits-all in terms of those chargers, and so there's compliance and there's standards, and that's what OCPP really pushes people towards. the protocol, but also the alliance of open charge point. And so following that, it standardizes the market. It provides people with that peace of mind that, that for what one company is doing can also be done by 3 or 4 other companies.
Right.
And when it comes into the OCPP component, what I really resonate with is the load management piece. It's the sharing of power on site. It's the ability to talk to one another through software and hardware, and really kind of find that scale on a building and find that flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
So that OCPP component is critical. You want that software that manages power. You want that comfort to know that you can dynamically change that power throughout the day to, avoid some of those peak demands or shed some power if other utilities in the building are taking power. And it's just so important. So, not have a charger that you just plug into the wall, and maybe we'll get into this later, but a charger that you plug into the wall is still taking power from that wall, right? Who pays for that?
Yeah.
So, making sure that's networked and connected is really important.
Yeah, agreed. And I think we kind of touched on a lot of things there, but the energy management system incorporated into the kind of OCPP network is something that might not be understood until it's actually installed and working for the customers. It's just there's so many benefits. You mentioned like peak demand charges and whatnot, and for people out there, just there are demand charges that are incurred at certain peak, especially that can be avoided. Obviously, with an energy management system was, even if it were a dump station, it wouldn't be funded through this rebate program anyway. But the importance of maybe the early days, let's say, when people were just putting in dump chargers, non-networked, let's just call it.
That's like EVSC and charger, right? We use different terms internally, externally, right?
Yeah. So, these kind of the understanding of like the terms and whatnot. But that's part of why we want to have this kind of informative session with people, so people have a better understanding of, that's what that term means. And like demand charges is a good one.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll see that on a bill, on the hydro bill, and they'll see, wow, that's pretty high. We want to be able to like decrease that somehow and not have that. Like if there's too many chargers charging at the same time, then and then the lights and then everything else that's basically
HVAC, different utility.
For the common space, especially in the case of MERBs, as we're discussing, in parkades, there's a lot of potential things that are running at the same time, and that's where the demand would obviously go up, and the charges would be more expensive without an energy management system in place.
For sure, and that's really describing the network management piece, right? Having it online, capable of managing that those components through software.
Yeah.
With the OCPP side, what's really I think critical to the business is that it's a common language, right? It's the interoperability of one charger that's OCPP and another charger that's OCPP can still function on the same site. And as long as, again, every company that offers EVs for the most part is doing testing as they should, the chargers and that interoperability piece is huge, right? And then let's go over the flexibility side of it. What's really nice about that platform and that standardization is that if for whatever reason you want to sever ties with that CPO, the charge point operator, you can keep that asset. You can keep that charger. You can replace the charge point operator. You're not left with anything stranded on site. And so you have to recognize, well, my investment for installation would likely have been large. Do I want to rip and replace something that's still functional? And I'm just not happy with the provider.
Right.
And so I think those elements for multifamilies are also really important to consider. To each their own. Some of them that aren't on that certification would still be great operators, and people are very happy with them. But we feel the industry is still moving towards that as a standard protocol.
Yeah, there's a number of network solution providers out there, of course, and such as Switch. and basically to have the ability to basically have different software using the same hardware is essentially future-proofing in a kind of a higher level, I guess. In that sense, yeah. So I always advise people going through this process that to carefully consider and compare warranties and look at the kind of longevity of the coverage when deciding which network company to go with. And like you mentioned, there's a lot of experience behind Switch at this stage, across Canada certainly. And what are your thoughts on that as far as the importance of like warranties and how that comes into play?
Think break.
Yeah.
Stuff happens.
Yeah.
It's not every day, so you don't have to go overboard with some of this stuff. But I think it's a point of concern for some buildings, right? What do I do a year into my service with this company, whether it's us or somebody else? What do I do if this charger breaks down? How am I covered? And so what we feel is nice just about how we operate our warranties is we're dealing directly with that site. And so that site, that property manager, they can come to us, or that strata, they can come to us and they can say, okay, our electrician says this charger doesn't work. We've already done everything remotely. Coming back to the network piece, we can do that. So we've done everything remotely. We've tested it. We understand that, okay, maybe there's some fault somewhere and the charger has to be replaced. So that can come straight in through an RMA to Switch, and we can convert that. We can send a new charger to site. That happens. That happens regularly. And so again, where Switch comes in, where a building might have kind of gone third party or gone to something else, it just gets a little convoluted, a little bit long in the tooth. They don't know how to go. People pass the buck and so forth. So having that direct relationship helps. So that, from a warranty standpoint, is good. Now, warranties in most cases are still requiring installation. And so we always want to have a conversation with the strata to let them know, okay, yes, the charger's covered, but who takes it on and off the wall? What does that cost look like? Who's paying that bill? Yeah. And so you want to go through those conversations with those stratas, and there's ways around that to mitigate it. There's extended warranties. There's Switch Care. It's a program that we offer that extends the warranty of that charger, but also includes that truck roll fee and rate. Everything's paid for by us to send the electrician to site. So there's ways that we can support that. There's a cost to it, but that warranty piece is important. It's understanding up front, who do I reach out to, and what does that process look like? Most of these level 2 chargers, they're coming with 2 and 3 year warranties. And so you're covered for the most part, but you still have to recognize and understand that there's a requirement to send somebody technically competent to the site to work with troubleshooting on the backside, and then find out what that looks like and what are those costs. So you always want to make sure that people are aware, because it's not just that capital expense. What is my operational expense to have this project on site too?
Well said. Now let's talk EV ready. So we're kind of
let me get my scroll here.
So let's start with the definition of EV ready, because this is maybe a term that not many people out there may be familiar with. But essentially it's defined as the parking space. Each parking space must have a termination point in an electrical wiring installation to power a level 2 EVSE, electrical vehicle supply equipment station. And that would have to accommodate each resident of a multi-unit residential building or MURB. So a lot of jargon there, but basically we're kind of in a lucky position here in British Columbia where many municipalities have put in bylaws in place, especially over the last few years, like in, say, 2021, 22.
Sure.
For the most part in Metro Vancouver especially, but also I think in Greater Victoria and a few other jurisdictions.
Yeah, Langford's been really forward-thinking, Nanaimo's been forward-thinking. Vancouver for sure.
Yeah. So we're in kind of a fortunate position in that respect. Again, we can also go up to, I think, Squamish, if I'm not mistaken. So given that, what are the benefits of EV ready, and why is it that these municipalities have basically decided that having new buildings under their bylaws would be required to be EV ready. So, and I think part of the design of the rebate program that we assist people with, and that you provide service for, is to get more buildings to meet that new standard, right? So instead of the sort of conventional approach of just, okay, there's maybe 3 people in the building that have EVs that want to put in charging, they're not looking beyond 3 chargers to meet those 3 vehicles. That would be standalone. That would be what's called a standalone rebate, which still exists.
Still there.
It's still there. So that rebate can also be provided. But I think the impetus and the rationale, I guess is the right word, for EV Ready and this program in particular is to really provide a greater funding base for the retrofit buildings out there. So buildings built before 2022 that would qualify to get to that same level of EV readiness.
Sure.
So given that, would you consider EV readiness the new baseline standard for MERBs moving forward? And do you see that, when you always try and encourage your customers, if they have that choice, to go that route and to sort of anticipate future growth, and the EV mandate that's still in effect in BC here for 2035, we're still looking at 100% adoption.
Let's get there.
Yeah, and I think if you're gonna put in even 1 charger in a building, even if it's a small building that qualifies as a MERB of 5 units minimum, I think the more logical approach at this stage is to really go towards the EV ready. That's what we try to encourage anyway. Would you agree with that?
I mean, you're speaking to somebody who offers chargers, offers chargers as a living. If I'm wearing my developer's hat, maybe a different answer. I don't know, right? Because of the cost. But look, we know that the cost effectiveness of making a building EV ready at time of build is immensely less expensive than doing a retrofit. You have power allocated in panels out to stalls themselves, and that's ready. Whether it's buried in the wall, up at a junction box, charger on the wall. All those scenarios are at play in different municipalities, and some different parameters exist as to what's going to be ready in that sense. But yeah, it's that scalability, the cost effectiveness, the ability that in 5 years we might have higher utilization if new sales are reaching those targets, which we believe they are still on pace to do. And yeah, it's also kind of, well, not even kind of, it's a major upside, especially in the rental market, from the retrofit side, but from new builds, I really feel, yes, it's the right path forward. I feel that others are taking that on, with Vancouver and other municipalities leading the charge, really just saying, we're defining this, it works. Yeah, it's a little bit troublesome to get out of the gates, but it's seemingly flattening out in terms of how difficult it is. People expect it, people need it, people want it. And so my conversation with the developer or the engineers when they're designing these things is, how do we make the most effective location for these chargers at site design? And so, yeah, with the developers, I mean, they know they have to do it now, and they encourage it, they have bought into it, right? And yeah, they essentially build a process around that now. So it's very effective, and I would love to see other municipalities that aren't doing it really engage in it.
I think this needs to go nationwide, and you guys operate across the country, so I think having that kind of code change in place will really shift the whole industry into understanding the importance of having buildings to be EV ready. There's so much talk on the affordability side, of how do we build more effectively. This is mostly for cities, I would say. Especially with high dense population cities in Canada like Vancouver. This is really should be a consideration across the board, and like I kind of mentioned, it's a standard. Certainly in the municipalities that have bylaws in place, but I think given the uptake, as you mentioned, for new builds, the importance of also getting all those older buildings retrofitted to meet that same level
for sure
is imperative, and that is why the funding is more beneficial if you do go that route for the infrastructure, EV ready infrastructure portion of the rebate of up to $120,000 per complex, and prior to reaching, going into doing the work, as far as getting all those stalls EV ready with level 2 ability and accessibility, that the plan is kind of the first step, right? And the EV ready plan is, I think, something that a lot of buildings have taken advantage of to this point, and I'd say even more so. And I'm sure you guys do that as well.
The electricians are fully booked. It's a great platform for them. It's revenue for them, obviously, but it's engagement with new buildings. It's engagement with different strategists and property managers. So it's super effective for them, and they obviously will convert on some of them, not all of them, for EV installation. But having an EV readiness plan is spot on.
Yeah, and I should mention, because I mentioned the maximum of $120,000 for the infrastructure. For the plan, it's up to $3,000 per complex. So, good for stratas and strata members thinking about it, but also co-ops, townhomes,
of course,
across the board, all entities that are able to take advantage of this retrofit EV charger rebate. It's kind of a 3-phase process of starting with the plan, which also could accommodate the Ministry of Housing's EPR, or electrical planning report, which your electricians do as well, I'm assuming?
We find it's really common for our electricians to go to site and do the EPRs alongside an EV ready plan. It's one visit, it's more comprehensive, obviously, and a much more in-depth dialogue, but you're creating this, not future-proof, but you're creating this template of this model of, here's my building, here's my projected need, here's my capacity and space available, and for that, it's great insight for that building to have, right? Especially as they take from the reserves and pay for projects.
Right, and part of the EPRs, it is a requirement. And then again, I mentioned the Ministry of Housing because it's not under the Ministry of Energy and Climate Solutions, which is what the other rebate, not to confuse everybody, but just they are two different things, and putting them together makes a lot of sense in many cases. So, of course, the $3,000, up to $3,000 that a strata could receive by doing an EV ready plan would cover only the EV charging element of that, right? And in the design aspect of how to make each resident enable the access for level 2 charging. So it could be, obviously done in a ratio of like 4-to-1. I'm not sure if you guys, it depends on each building, right? As to
we've done 10-to-1 in some.
10-to-1?
Yeah, it's really uncommon, trust me. I think the most 10-to-1 is certainly, out to lunch almost, but we have done that. You can do a 6-to-1, you can do sequential charging around those chargers. 4-to-1 is the very common standard. We're seeing just it's based on user experience, right? 2-to-1, 4-to-1, you can go around those numbers.
Yeah, because 1-to-1 is maybe cost prohibitive. And maybe it's the ideal.
Yeah, of course it's the ideal, right? You're getting the most bang for your buck out of power. And in multi-families, it's just almost not possible. It's very uncommon to see a 1-to-1 ratio, right? You see that in public charging spaces for the most part, not MERS.
Yeah. So again, kind of going through the three phases of the EV ready versus just the standalone. So that's kind of the last phase of, okay, amongst all the people that now have the infrastructure in place in your residence, how many people actually want the charger put in right now? And they would have up to $14,000 of the rebates to go towards, up to 10 chargers, $1,400 per charging station, to the maximum of $14,000 per year. And it should add that there's not so much of an understanding, but I always like to tell people that as long as the funding is available, they could reapply for the next year and the next year, hopefully, as long as funding is still in place for the program. So if you max out on your 14,000, you can go to the next year, and the people living there realize, hey, all these people are benefiting from these chargers. Maybe I should get an EV and put a charger in.
Exactly.
Since I already have the infrastructure in place, and that $14,000 could be available once again.
Yeah, and that's a great point to bring up. Usually, based on utilization or how many vehicles are currently at that building versus how many stalls are at that building, we're often seeing people max that out, right? We're often seeing that 10, 11 charger investment right up front, because the electrician, more often than not, is going to say, we're already on site, let's offset a little bit of the cost for the installation because we're here, we have everything else because we're doing building infrastructure, let's just put chargers on the wall as well. And I would say my experience of all of these programs, about 98% of them are doing 10 chargers.
Good to hear.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. So given that Switch offers end-to-end for networked EVSE or EV chargers, is there some wisdom you could share for the listeners out there that are seeking energy management solutions and may not yet understand the benefits of network chargers and energy management system? We kind of talked about it a little bit. Maybe you can talk specifically to Switch's solution. I think it's called Cortex, and like the network itself, the Switch network.
Yeah. I think we talked about it earlier. People assume that EV charging is relatively simple.
Yeah.
It is. It should be. When you peel away the onion a little bit, you can have all of these features. You can have all of these different components that would, help you with your EV charging. My wisdom, my advice is do your homework. We're not the only player in town. We're good at what we do, but we compete with others that are just as good as we are. And that's the good part of this industry. We've learned, we've grown up, we've matured, and we offer something very similar, but we're also very different. And so do your homework, understand how they're going to charge you over time, how they charge your residents for the consumption of power, how they charge you on an annual or a monthly basis. How do they lock you into contracts? Do they lock you into contracts? So understanding the bigger picture, broaden the horizon a little bit is when people really need to assess that situation. There's amazing consultants out there that enable you to understand the bigger picture and not just pigeonhole you into the lowest common denominator being the price, and just recognizing that is critical, right?
And thanks for pointing that out, because that's essentially what we do as EV advisors. We're basically neutral, so obviously we can't tell people to go to Switch necessarily, but it's good to know about all the technology that you provide as one of the solutions that are out there, of course. Essentially as EV advisors, we take on that role as kind of consulting with the interested MERBs or residents, stratas and co-ops and townhomes and all the rest of it that want to put charging into their building at whatever capacity. It may just start with one,
For sure.
and then it may actually end up being a whole EV ready retrofit. Because we want to also ensure that there's basically one solution for the building. It's not going to be like a whole bunch of different companies and networks communicating.
It just won't work.
Exactly.
Right.
That it's common space, that it should be viewed that way by all residents, even if they're not amongst the EV drivers that require the charging. That these decisions should be done collectively. Usually it entails an AGM or an SGM where these decisions are made, and if the residents are informed, hopefully through engaging with us or with you guys, at the more industry level as well, that they have the ability to make those good decisions appropriately. And I think he's kind of keyed in with that, is so much of the success rate is on the basis of being educated, and it's not, like it's a for or against. It's more the ability to join in when you're ready, right? Because it's not, I don't have an EV, so why would I want to pay for this? It's, do you want your building to have the added value of providing this as what's now considered basically an amenity, and the new buildings have it locked in already as far as just the infrastructure. So kind of going the next step with the chargers themselves is obviously going to add value to each stall where those chargers exist. Just kind of a good offering to know that the value add is really there.
The key point there is, I think, collaboration. Use EV advisors, use the advisory option, get perspective, get challenge, get pushback, and then make the decision. And so coming into it, just knowing how that process works, who you can go to, that's kind of, as you say, common ground. Not one versus the other is better, and you're going to be very agnostic around that. So I think what's really important for everyone that's listening to this is, how do they reach out in that sense, and what does that engagement look like? And knowing that is critical, because they can then go to someone like Switch or somebody else and start asking some more prudent questions around that, because some of these people, they're very rudimentary, they're very early on in the discovery around EV charging. Hey, I just bought this car, how do I charge it? What's the process? And so getting them over that initial hump is really important. And I think that education for them to then go and be a little bit more engaged around the idea of charging, to ask some really smart questions. So collaboration is big in terms of the charge point operator and then EV advisory services and those in the industry.
Agreed. I mean, I certainly have seen a change in what would seem kind of a short time in this role as lead for the EV advisor service and program. People seem to be more, as I would say before, there was a lot of convincing that had to happen in the back rooms of the stratas and meetings and whatnot. While now there's definitely more of a keen interest to kind of increase the value of the building, and as not just providing charging for the residents that have EVs, but well beyond that. So I'm really seeing that there's been a pretty big shift in that regard. In places like Vancouver, where obviously there's a lot of EVs on the road.
We're a healthy market in EVs.
So I think we're kind of fortunate in that respect that we have pretty high adoption, and there's a reason for that. I mean, part of it's going to be the ability to charge at home, and home for the majority of people in a city like Vancouver is living in MURBs.
It is,
right? So that's why I think really it's an imperative that we have a solution in place, and luckily on the affordability side there are rebates available to for these for people that want to make this upgrade, this retrofit for existing buildings, that they can take advantage of our services as EV advisors, and then at least become educated and hopefully go the direction of getting a plan and then putting the infrastructure in and then the chargers.
What's something that I would love to touch on is the equity piece, being equitable of going into a building and not already being there. So that's a huge upside to having these rebates in place, where not just rebates, but also the requirement for new builds to have EV ready systems already there. The barrier to entry for those that, whether it's a co-op or a low income housing, and they have an EV charging or a need for EV charging, their next step at that building to put a charger on the wall, or if a charger is already there, is reduced. And so giving access to most or all is a huge part of this as well. It's not just those that are expensive vehicles and can afford everything in that sense. Those that are in different positions have this available to them as well. And that's why I feel the developers and this bylaw to have EVs put in during construction is imperative.
Yeah, I think the term that comes to mind is like removing the barriers.
For sure.
Right? So I think that's kind of the next level, kind of where we're at right now, and I kind of take pride, I guess, in the fact that we're in that space of like removing the barriers, quite simply. So for people listening, hopefully you're able to get a hold of us at whatever capacity, and we can take you through the steps. And Steve, maybe you can tell us more about a successful case or cases where Estrada was able to take advantage of the full spectrum of the EV Ready rebates available, and hopefully used our services as EV advisors as well, because part of, I think, the collaboration model of like our offerings through the EV advisory service is essentially to take people through the whole process, to make recommendations based on their situations, whether they would benefit from the full EV Ready, or maybe it might be a situation where they just go the standalone route, but to know what rebates are available to them, and how to go about applying to those programs through either our partners at BC Hydro or Fortis BC that actually manage the programs and take the applications. So given that, maybe you can point it to some examples of the successful buildings that have sort of gone through the full gamut.
Sure. One comes to mind. It's in North Vancouver, and a bit of a backstory. They already had a couple of chargers on site. They were standalones, and they were in use almost every day, all the time. So the high utilization, and they were maxed out. They had multiple drivers on site, 4 chargers, and we ended up putting a reservation system in place so people could put, I'm going to be Tuesday 4 till 8 or whatever the days of the week are. They learned about that, and then they wanted to find more information. And so they went through the process through you guys, delved into, hey, what do I have access to? We're already using Switch. We're going to maybe look at doing the entire building. And so what ended up happening is they have over 250 stalls in this building, and they went through a tender process through recommendation. They went out to the electrical contractors, essentially did a small bid, get a couple of quotes, and what this ended up being, they chose an electrical contractor, and they maxed out $137,000. They installed they did the entire infrastructure of their entire building, and they put 50 chargers on site. So they went even higher and more than the allocation of 10, and fully invested. They fully got behind this program. And not only that, because the charging is so important, but just knowing capacity, knowing that in 5 or 10 years they need to probably do other upgrades. So going through the entire process and learning that as they go with you guys was obviously huge to them. It's a big upfront cost, but there's ways to offset that through different aftermarket credits and so forth. But they fully jumped in, and I think that's a great success story of them knowing what's available, being coached along the way, and maximizing the benefit. And they have 50 plus drivers now. 54 on site because the original 4, but many other drivers out of north of 250 stalls that have chargers now.
Amazing. Yeah, great example. Thanks for sharing that. Always good to hear, because sometimes, I would say most of the time, almost all the time even, we're kind of getting people at the very early phase of the process and sort of initiating the whole process. So never really hear what happens at the end, rarely anyway.
Sure.
So it's good to hear about that. I just wanted to ask, I know we had a show just recently this past weekend from the recording of this podcast here at the convention center that I saw you at the Electrify Everything. Sorry, everything electric. Everything electric.
It's the ESC thing.
Yeah,
right.
I do believe we need to electrify everything.
Yeah.
By the way, but yeah, it was the Everything Electric show.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of industry people like yourself that were there, and we were there. We had a booth, and so talked to a lot of people at the show, and I think it was really great. And obviously there was a lot of EVs there, and we're talking. I think it was up to 90 or so models that are now electric that are available in BC, and that's with 100% tariff in place with China. So if that ever opened up, it would be more than probably double that. And I'm kind of hoping that may actually transpire. We'll see. But as it stands now, there's a lot of models, a lot of vehicles that are available. We're kind of EV guys here. What would you say is your top 3 EVs, in your perspective, in your view? Personally?
So, all right, I love this question. Some context. I'm a huge car nut. I love cars, whether they're internal combustion or hybrids or electrics and whatnot. I love cars, and when I was in college, I was valet. So I drove everything from Ferraris to Lamborghinis to Porsches to mom and dad minivans that had car seats in the back, like you name it, I drove it. So well versed in that space. I would have to say in today's market with the EVs, just what is available on the market, the Ford Lightning. I mean, Ford Lightning is hands down one of the most utility-based vehicles, although you can't really park in the city. It's just, there's so much upside to that. I love the Ford Lightning. But if I go over to my previous component of driving cars that are 15, 20 years old, the one on the market that's fully electric that I would never be able to afford is the Rimac. Was it Nevera or Rivera? The Rimac Rivera, because Rimac got bought out by Ducati.
Right.
And so under still Volkswagen brand, I would assume. But anyways, that thing is 0 to 60 in like 1.6 seconds.
It's a monster.
It is incredible. So I would have to go with those two. Is definitely the top favorites.
Nice.
But at that show, I got my hands on the VW microbus. And I think it's called a microbus.
Oh, the ID Buzz?
The ID Buzz.
ID Buzz, yeah.
ID Buzz. And that is a cool car.
Yeah.
It's a cool car van or whatever they want to call it. Utility.
No, it's definitely a van.
Just the market, it's evolving, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's hybrid, whether it's fully electric. I mean, the market's evolving. You see OEMs that really get behind the fully electric, and you get OEMs that get behind hybrid. I think it's a great market, and I'm excited to see what comes in the next 5 to 10 years.
Agreed. I love to see the innovation that's happening in this space. On that note, just the kind of ID Buzz companies that are doing the additional kind of components that they can modify the vehicle to have like a little kitchenette coming out of the back.
Those are cool.
That were at the show, and that they can pop up the top of the van. So even if it's not done through the OEMs like the Volkswagens directly or what have you, in this space, it basically being a better way to drive. The horizon's looking good, right? So hopefully this has been a helpful exercise to kind of dive into the process and just this kind of technology and the features that companies like Switch provide to those people that may have thought it was not possible before and actually is. So do contact us, and we'll try and help you through the process, provide you with the information on rebates and what would be eligible, what you'd be eligible for. And if I could just end on one note. Last question. Totally off script, but I want to end all my interviews with this one.
Is this like the chicken hot wings one? You're just going to throw some curveball right at the end?
Could be.
Okay.
It depends on how you answer. So if you could change one thing with like a magic wand or a wish, what would it be?
Like one thing in general?
Could be.
Anything?
Anything.
Holy smokes. Cleaner rivers and oceans. Just because I've been watching this really cool project internationally. I can't remember the specific name of it, but they put barriers along the rivers and they collect all the trash that comes through in high flow weather events, and just the amount of garbage and plastic that come in. So that's, and I'm not even understanding why I'm saying this because I'm not in that market, but like cleaner oceans, cleaner beaches.
Well, I mean, that actually brings up a good point because a lot of people don't think about things like this as, car drives and internal combustion engines. There's a lot of dripping going on for vehicles of all ages onto our roads that eventually do go down the drains, get into our water supply, go into the oceans. So fossil fuels have been quite damaging in that regard as well. So that's a good point. Well, thanks so much. That was my curveball question at the end there.
Yeah, this is fun.
So thanks for joining us, and really appreciate your wisdom. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks.
Plug-in BC strives to inform you with expert advice to assist you with your EV charging needs. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and review us wherever you get your podcasts or on this YouTube channel. Plug-in BC is also on our socials, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. Also, check out our informative website at pluginbc.ca, where you can also sign up for our newsletter. I'm J.M. Toriel, advising you to Plug-in BC.